Let's take a look at doing some multi-view projection drawings using the cube that you've been developing. So I have my cube here, we'll use it as a visual reference. Maybe it'll stick up there. All right, so we'll need a few tools to get started. Really, we're going to be using our triangle a lot for our projection. We've got our pencils, a lead holder, a mechanical pencil. I'm bringing in a compass. We'll look at some advanced tools with the compass in a little bit. Ruler for measuring, tape for holding things down, and we'll also introduce a little bit of trace paper for planning and doing quick drawings for in-class exercises. It's just cheaper and quick to work with, and you don't have to be so concerned with cleanness and carefulness as the other paper. One nice tip with this, if you roll it out, right, it gives you a transparent, so you can kind of see through it, way to work, so you can use it for tracing from other drawings, as the name implies, but also just for quick sketching. Think about your layouts, the drawing organization, the composition before you commit them all to the paper, because you'll see things get a little bit complicated when we start to add more and more stuff to our drawings. Another important thing is this architect scale makes a really useful tool for preparing your trace paper. I'm going to suggest you get a handle on this. It takes a little practice, but you don't want to have to take out your knife, take out your cutting board, take out scissors, and cut this perfectly every time, because it just defeats the purpose of having it be a quick tool. So if you can stick this, you can also do it with the metal ruler, but I find this even better. Just in the corner there, it kind of presses in, holds the roll, and then just pull on up, and it tears off nice and neat. Maybe you have a longer roll, you just tear it halfway and move it down, keep tearing. And it works really great. Right, if you already have it on your desk, I have some ink or something there. You can even use it in situ to grab that. It's a little bit trickier because you don't get as easy of a hold down to start with, but then it works pretty well. Give it a little piece. Okay, so now we have a piece of trace paper to start with. It's a good place to plan out, so I'll go ahead and tape that down. I've got a couple little pieces here. I just have the other paper behind it for reference. I like drawing on the Bristol better when it's really drafting purposes, but for this kind of testing in class exercise work, the trace paper will do well. I'm going to use my mechanical pencil because it's a bit faster, but we've already covered how to keep your drafting lead holder nice and sharp, and if I need some heavier lines, I'll come back to that. So I've got that in place. Bring my parallel roll up. Be careful about the edges. Tracing paper is very easy to damage, and like we saw before, sometimes you'll grab that first edge of tape trying to get over it. And again, you're going to be working with much larger pieces of paper, a 22 by 22, or at least a little bit bigger, which makes it nice because you don't have to be so near the edge. When I'm working with this smaller piece here for the visual aid, we're much more likely to hit these little parts on that. We'll start with something simple. Just gonna pick a place to begin and draw a reference square here within my page. And since I can trim it off later in a trace paper, I'm not even going to really worry about where it starts. Just want to give myself something. Right, I'm going to do a smaller, about half size of what the assignment asks for, 18 by 18 for the in-class exercise. I'll do a 9 by 9. It's just our boundary area, and for your drawings that you develop will be important to be larger, but for right now it won't matter too much. I've got my adjustable triangle here too, because that might come in handy a little bit later. And you see that this triangle is a little too small. Why don't we grab our bigger 45 so I don't have to move my board too much. I don't need my tape anymore. So just a nice reference square to be able to place things, and then we're going to draw a 6-inch square very lightly in the center of this. So since it's 8 inches, or sorry, 9 inches across, we'll come 1.5 inches in. And again, measuring outside of my drawing space, because then I won't see the marks in my drawing. I don't have to go through and erase them later on. It's a hassle. So my primary work area is there, and I have a little buffer if I need to go outside of it. So what are we going to do? We're going to draw this cube through multi-view projection. And so one of the reasons we start with the cube, it's an easy way to think about what multi-view projection is. And we have to think about what our sides are. I'm going to go ahead and we'll all kind of go from this assumption and take the side that has the corner cut off as the top. Right? It may not matter, depends on how you made it. And if I look a little closer, this is like a cap the way I made it, so I'm going to call that one top. And for the reference of this video, I'll go ahead and just write it on there very quick. And if I do that, top, then I can decide on an orientation. I think it asks you to put it either this way or this way. I suggest like this because I'll work nice on this piece of paper, but if you do it this way, you might place the drawing in a different place. So let's start with this, which means that this would be my front view. You're going to see a lot of the examples have this kind of set up. So top, front, right side, and then left, back, and bottom. But I'll start with those three. To begin with, those are our primary multi-view projections. And the way you can think about this is, physically, with this box, kind of like the way we made it, you can unfold it into these projections on the paper to tell us about it from all directions or any direction. So if I start with the top, I can fold the right side out, sorry, the front side out, so I can see it relative to the top, right? They have a line here that's a fold line. Same with the right, I can fold it up, back, fold it up, left, fold it up, and the bottom, I have to fold all the way over, just like the cube. So we get that same thing. So we're kind of taking this and unfolding it towards us. And that's a very important thing to think about in how we look at it. And it's a very physical operation, right? If I'm like this, and this is going to be my first part of my drawing, I am then folding or rotating the cube to here to see this, right? And folding or rotating it here to see that, or here, or here, or all the way around. So I go either way, I guess. Which is important that you're not folding it down, because then I would see the inside face, which is not what we're trying to draw right now, and it'll get a bit confusing. So you always fold out towards you in these multi-view drawings. This will apply also when we go to section, where we cut the cube and show the inside. We cut it and then fold it out towards us so that we're looking at it in the right orientation. Okay, so we're going to start by just drawing that. Pretty straightforward. It's a 2" by 2" square. A few things we have to figure out on our way to this is, where do we want it to live? My paper is moved around, so I'm going to fix that because, anyway, I just want to make sure our medium's staying square. My paper got a little bit off, so now it's better. You get a little freedom here, but the choices you make early on will affect things later. For this drawing, it's not that important, but as we build in complexity, it will be important. And you'll see on the assignment sheet, right, there's this example page. There's kind of a very basic one, is what we'll kind of start with, and then things get a little bit more complex. So I'm going to do something like this, but add one level of complexity. Right, and so if we did this, where we put a face, a face, a face, and a face, we're using a lot of our area. You're going to have a bigger area, so you have a little more room to work with, but quickly we're going to start to run out of room. But using more spread out space makes a little simpler system for projecting for like a very basic kind of standard view drawing. We're going to get to stuff where we have a lot of views to manage, and so you're going to need to really plan out the use of the page. And that's another thing trace paper is great for. It's going over on the side, thinking about your layout, getting a sense of the scale before you commit everything to the process of drafting. So I'm going to start and do something like this. Right? And that just means I can actually use my 6" square there as a reference, and I'll start right here in the corner. And we can do our measurements for a 2" by 2" cube. Now, one thing you can do for fun as an advanced bit is to actually measure your cube and transfer whatever measurements you ended up with to the paper. And I'm breaking my rules and marking inside my drawing, but I think these light pencil marks will disappear. And again, I'm going to rough it all in. And if you don't want to move this a lot, which, on my smaller paper, I just want to avoid getting the edges, I can use a double triangle stack to do a secondary horizontal for small things. There's just that. And then I'm going to have to do the little notch, which should be 1 inch in from the two sides. Pretty close. Let's go with that. Again, I'm doing it in this orientation. So we got 1 inch. We'll make sure our ruler's down flat. Measurement right. 1 inch, 1 inch. And since that's at a 45, I can use my tool pretty easily to do it, and that way it verifies my measurements for me. And since I'm starting to get things roughed in enough, I can begin to add a little bit of line weight just to make it easier to see that very top side. Now this isn't just drawing the top side, but the top view projected into a flat two-dimensional or orthographic plane. So I have this part that we're seeing, which is the shape of the square with the corner triangle cut off. But I also have the stuff that happens in here, which I can still see if I'm just projecting my view straight down on this. I still see all of this, but it's at a different level than this top part, which means I got to draw it in a different way. But really what I need to add are the thicknesses of the material and maybe this condition down here of where the two pieces of material meet. This material is roughly 1/16 of an inch thick, so I'm going to go with that because it will be a lot simpler to manage, and you're welcome to do that. And if you want to draw it at a different thickness, you can do that too. See what happens. Right? The drawings will develop themselves, and it's a place to make decisions about design and other things, construction. So it's okay to start to translate. We're not looking at pure copying, but considering. And I see here that this side sits on that side. So the right side sits on the front, so I want to bring that all the way down first. And start to give it just a little more value. And then I can bring this one over. We want to pay attention to those details to really think of what we're conveying about the object, right? So that little bit there is important because it talks about what this thing is and how it's put together materially. There's going to be other conditions like that in my other views. So now I've got this to an even level of darkness. And what it's not quite doing, we just had a little line weight tutorial, we'll talk more about it, is conveying that like this is on top of this other stuff. To get that in, I can grab this other pencil and just quickly add a little bit more intensity to these other edges to make sure they pop. Right? I'm just drawing a couple of lines right next to each other to make sure that they add some thickness to give more value. And I may not do this for every single drawing, just for brevity of the tutorial, but now we can really see that there's this shape, which is highest priority on the block, and then these other elements or shapes down here, which are a little bit lower priority. So we have our top view. The assignment asks us to start to label some of the points so we can keep track of them. You can do that very, very lightly. You want to use a kind of consistent hand, and back in the day, we used these things so that we could have very precise and consistent letters. Now, it takes a bit of time, and for your in-class exercise, it's really not that important. But for this one, I'll try it out for fun. Right? This is just a little template. You go there, and I'm going to call this set of points for the triangle B. And I guess I'm labeling in this counterclockwise fashion. Still using all my tools to help make sure everything lines up. You probably don't have one of these because we haven't asked you to get it. It's a little bit of a old drafting tool, but kind of fun to pull it out and use it, right? And it gives me very consistently sized letters, very clean and clear. But I can probably also use this as a guide and get something pretty close. So if I say that this is B1, this is B2, this is B3. Whatever they're labeled doesn't matter. Like in the order, you can use numbers, you can use letters. It's just something to start getting you in the habit of keeping track of where all the parts go so you can follow them around. But that's it. We have our top view. We could even make a little line here, a little text guide, and come in here and do top. And we used to do lettering where we had that guide, but you also used your tools to make all the verticals, and then used some of the other tools to make the horizontals, and then did all the little curves by hand to have very consistent lettering. And some people who practice all the time, you get very good, and you don't have to use tools anymore. But I have a lot of practice. We'll just go with that. So I have my top view. Now we want to go ahead and draw the front view, right? So in a sense, we're just folding that view up, or rotating the cube on our paper by projecting. And the first step in that projection is to bring down relevant points that are shared between the two views, which would be this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner. So one's already brought down. I don't need to do that again. But B1, we're going to have to line up there and just very lightly bring it down. B2, B1, B3, bring down. And since I know this is shared, we'll bring that down. And that should cover everything that those two views share. When we pick a place to start drawing from, it helps now to give a little orientation, right? Like in the top view, we don't really have a reference to ground. Ground is just this big infinite surface or white table or whatever it's sitting on, so we don't draw it. But when we go to the front view, we can draw a ground line down here at the bottom. And I'm just going to use my 6-inch boundary. Switch over here. Actually give this a little bit of oomph, some line weight, because it's the ground, right? The ground is thick, the ground is heavy, and this helps to start to establish how I'm projecting and how I'm unfolding. This thing needs a little bit of sharpening. So I've got a nice strong ground line here. And in this case, because we're looking at the front and the way I've decided to project or unfold, it's sitting horizontal, kind of like if you're standing and looking at the ground in that way. Then what else do we need to do? Well, right now we don't have height anywhere on this page, so we have to start with a measurement. But after we get area and location and left, right, x, y dimensions, and then we get a z dimension in place in this drawing, we actually don't need to do measuring very much anymore. Sometimes you'll find things that we don't have reference to, so we have to do a little measuring, but we'll get to where we have to do less and less measuring so that we can just rely on the drawing and the projection systems to speed things up. And that's one of the nice things about this, is we don't have to measure everything once we get a few references in place. All right, so I've got that 2-inch mark. This should just give us a roughing line. What else do we need to know? Well, we already don't need to measure that this is 1 inch over because we already have that intersection there, but I will have to measure 1 inch down from that because we don't have that available to us yet. But as soon as I draw it, we will. Let's make sure that that's 2 inches. Great. Here's 1. So these initial measurements are very important, because if we don't get these accurate, it'll project through the whole system and make everything else a little less accurate. Now there's some nuance here going on, so I'm going to do a very light line and then come back and look at that. Okay, but that's like the basic roughing. Looks pretty similar, just slightly in a different orientation because of the object we're using. That'll change depending on what cube you're drawing. So up here, I know I have this cap on it, so I will need to do that 1/16 measurement to give myself in thickness. And then I might need to examine my cube just to sort of think about what's happening here, right? I have the cap on two sides, and this triangle cut is kind of in from that, which I already have some of revealed there. So now I have my 1/16 material and my 1/16 material, which I can start to now darken in what's going on here. And this might be something where you start to consider if you want to reveal that seam and make it a bit heavier, right? It's where the glue is, or if you want to like make it a pretty light line and have it kind of hide in there. And you'll notice that I'm often working and trying to do all my horizontals as much as I see are available, and then come through and do all my verticals so that I don't have to keep switching my tools all the time, which takes a little more time and effort. And as you get used to the tools, like it's good to do all this detail, but if you need to do a quick round of one where you don't worry about all this extra stuff and you just get it drawn as a cube with the corner cut off in all the directions, go for it and come back and add detail in the next round. Because now what I see here is that this goes from the lower corner of the two pieces of material because of the way I made it to have a cleaner look. So I'm going to have to change that line, but I can use my tool to just connect those two corners because we're dealing with an even offset. Like that. And so I've got it roughed in. Now I might come along and give it a little more intensity on the outer edges to make the shape stand out, just like we did above. Do kind of a quick version. And there's a lot of this, getting it in roughly, and then coming back and giving it its emphasis through line weight. And you can take different strategies. You just do it all rough quickly and then come back at the end and put all your line weights in. That can be great for simple drawings. Can get a little bit complicated with more complex drawings because it's hard to see everything at one time, and so you might get a little confused. So I like to do a little balance, kind of get it roughed in enough that I can see what I'm doing, and then try to even out my line weights, but that comes with a bit of experience. So now we can see that face is standing out a little bit, and I do know that these other ones go up, and I might have to come and check, okay, that one caps off on the top. All right, should have known that, but that's okay. And there we go. So now I have a front view. Same thing, I can come in and measure this distance. Give myself a place for a guide, and using all caps and very vertical blocky letters put in front. I can also bring down my labeling to help me track the points, because really all we're doing here is tracking points in space and then connecting them to reveal shapes and forms. So we've got A there, B1, B2. Now you don't need all of these on all of your drawings, but for the first ones, go ahead and start out by doing it so we can keep track. Now, I don't know what these points are, but similar, I went A, B, C, D, and go E, F, G, H. So this would be E, F, and that's all I can see here. That just helps me keep these in my mind as things start to get more complicated. All right, so next up, we've done our top, front. Now let's go ahead and give this right view. Something you'll notice, right, it's going to be rotated. It's not going to be sitting on the ground, though we could do this if we wanted to. But I'm going to use this space for something else, and we'll start very kind of strict in projection and just rotate that to there and work on it as a side view. I'll start again by making a ground plane line. Again, I just like this because it helps give a bit of orientation to the drawing, so it doesn't just feel like we're drawing floating cubes in space. Whew, maybe that one a little too much. Hopefully you're not working at this strange angle so you can actually see what you're drawing. No, that's okay. We can figure that out there. And now I have a lot of information going between these two views already that I don't probably need to do much, if any, measurement at this point. So what we'll start by doing is bringing our projections over in this horizontal direction. So we're rotating around the side and unfolding the box. There we go, there's that one. And again, it's all these ones we know. And they should be very light. You might want to get your 2H pencil for this, just so they don't interfere with anything else. And similar to this, we're going to have almost the same view, right? There's some subtle differences in the material, but the heights and things are the same. And so I don't need to remeasure these heights. In fact, I probably shouldn't, because the more I remeasure them, the more likely they're off from each other. Instead, I can use projection to come and bring these heights around the corner and project them along a parallel path to make these heights. This is called hinging the projection, and there's a lot of tools or a lot of techniques to do it. I'll start with a very simple one first. One of the trickiest things I think that happens here is that it can be confusing of where do I start my hinge, right? And actually you can pretty much do it from anywhere, which makes it even more tricky, but also gives you a lot of freedom to design how the drawing works. Now, in the very simplest way, I like to start from a reference corner of the object to the inside of the rotation. So if I'm bringing this view around to here, the inside corner of the rotation would be here. Now I could hinge right here, right, somewhere arbitrarily in space. I could use the corner of this block to hinge. That really doesn't matter. And actually, why don't we go and do kind of a fun one and kind of put it in between these two views. This might be something you want to measure just for precision and accuracy, but these should be, in the case of my drawing, 2 inches apart. So let's do it right in the middle. Let's do it at 1 inch. And this is my fold line, and will become my hinge. I'll just draw it out across there. It probably doesn't need to go all the way. Maybe it does. We'll go ahead and do that. Super light, because this is going to get overlapped by other drawings and changed. And again, now I have a fold line, right, where this thing folded to this view. I can do a similar fold line to this view to help me visualize it and define where my hinge point will be. So I went 1 inch over, 1 inch over. The more precise you are with these and measured, it just makes things a little easier to track back later on. So now I have a located hinge point. I need to circle this, just doing it for the video, and you'll see it circled in the examples, again, just for reference so you can see it. It's something that actually kind of fades away as you do the drawing. So I've set up these fold lines which are intersecting to define my hinge point, and we can start to build from there. So let's say I want to bring this view over and around the corner and up. We can do that, but we have to keep everything parallel in our projection lines, right? Notice that all these projections are parallel. So now I need to bring these up over parallel, which means they can only turn around 45-degree lines or in a 90-degree arc. And you do that either with straight lines for the hinging or with the compass that we'll bring in a little bit. So let's go ahead and just carry some horizontals is what we really need over. So we've got that one, that one. Right. So if I was trying to draw the right view over here, so let's find it front here, right here, I can do that. That's fine. I could actually put it here if that's what feels right because it's sitting on the ground. But since I've committed to here, I'm going to work with this in my multi-view system. Doesn't matter. You can play with either one that you want to. Now what I can do is come in here and provide a line to hinge around, which is a 45-degree bisector to this angle. Right? I should hit that intersection point and that intersection point if all my measurements are correct. It helps to even out little inconsistencies in the pencil. So now everywhere that these lines intersect this hinge, I can reflect them up. Right? It's kind of like a mirror. Right? It comes over, hits this, and reflects up, reflects up, reflects up, instead of reflecting down like a mirror would. Like a mirror that lets you see through it. So let's go ahead and bring those up. Might help me to flip this over so I can see and not be in your way. If I line this up perfectly with these points of intersection, everything should translate with the exact dimensions it had over here. You see that that's 1/16, that's 1/16. Right? This space is 2, this space is 2, this space is 1 and 1, and we can always double check when we're first getting started and see that here we have 2. It's a little bit off. Ooh, my lines might be a little messy, and I can see where it is. It's right there. I was just a little bit over from that point. Come back through and erase that. Make a little note about it, and then when I finish drawing my harder part, I'll clean it up there. But now we brought all the information around that we need to know, and we just have to remember that this top one overlaps, the side one is solid, and we can start to fill in what we're seeing. So why don't we start with that place where I have a little bit of an error. That's something that I would definitely want to come through with an eraser. Since this eraser doesn't seem to want to work, keep drawing. And this point here connects to this point there. Which we're going to run into something kind of weird. Right? Well, that should be at a 45-degree angle. It might not quite line up what we're working with here because of the material differences. And so if that isn't a 45, we can bring in our adjustable triangle. It's probably just slightly off from it based on the way I made the cube. And this thing works by, you can visually find the angle you want, or if you know it, you can type it in. I'm going to visually find it, pardon my blocking the view. Lock that in, I can see it's about 43 or 43 and a half. But I want to either do that, all right, to make sure it's accurate, or think about how I'd like to adjust the triangle. Take that out, stupid. But there we go. That's pretty much everything in there. Let me just add our background lines in. So that's one way to hinge. We move in one direction until we intersect with a reflection line, and then we kind of bounce and move another direction around this 45 degrees. Right, so it's really making a 90-degree turn around a 45-degree bisector. Another way we can do that, and this is kind of an aesthetic choice, visual choice you might be interested in, is with a compass. You probably have one like this, right? So it has a wheel to adjust the distance. It'd be nice if it had a lock. This one used to, but I don't think it has it anymore. And then you can adjust your points. And to keep the lead on this sharp, you'll need like a little sanding pad, or you can use your X-Acto knife to kind of keep it in place. Look at Francis Chang's book for some tips on that. I'm going to keep them about the same distance out. There, mine's got a little bit of a chipped off edge. I don't know if I have anything here to fix that. So we're just going to have some rough lines, right? I do have an X-Acto knife. I think it's just hiding underneath the drafting table right now. The quickest way you can do a little fix is to grab a piece of scrap paper or board or something. Move these like this and just kind of clean it up. What I'm trying to make is a bit of a wedge shape to it. We might have some sandpaper. That works pretty well. That's what we used to use for precision. Want something a little abrasive to clean up that chisel edge on the graphite. Right, so how does this work? Well, this is another way to do the hinge, because if we draw circles, they will stay perfectly parallel. So if I put my location point marker there, and then I'll put a little dot in the paper. It'll puncture through it, probably on this trace paper. And I extend this out to my furthest line. I can go around that curve, and I should hit exactly there. So it's going from this to this. Right? These are the two fold lines. And so going from that 90-degree perpendicular projection, it's like a plane of glass where all these rays or projection are going through it. And then when they hit it, they get bent around to this other plane of glass. So we can do several of these by just getting it set up, finding our way to the points, coming around. Right, they should line up perfectly with the others. If they're not, that's telling me something, right? Maybe I missed a little bit there, and that should have actually been in a different place. So this method is pretty accurate if you have a good compass, and I like the way it looks. So it's worth getting familiar with. You can see it gets pretty quick if we just quickly adjust the compass and bring things around corner. So you'll see this in a lot of the examples. You can use the angled bisector. In this case, it's pretty easy to figure out. It gets a little bit more complicated, as you'll see in some of the examples. But that's the basics of an orthogonal multi-view projection system. Right? We pull things out through these projection planes or fold lines. We're really just like taking the box and unfolding it into these other views. Now we can do this for pretty much any view, and we'll get more and more complex in this as the semester goes on. Right now, where we really want to go is something that's not so direct and easy to see in comparison to the box. What I want to do is show us this view, right? Look right at that triangular cut, see inside the box a little bit from a different point of view. So we can do that through projection because we already have all of our information on here. So what I'm going to do is project in this direction and fold the box over and do a drawing out here somewhere. And maybe if I make some unconsidered decisions, we can get some interesting things happening. So I'm picking this direction because it's at a 45-degree angle to this, which means I can come in here and draw for reference. I could just, maybe I'll do it in a little different place. I'll do it at this corner. Right. This is my fold line or projection line. And I'm intentionally doing it so it's going to land somewhere kind of awkward, but this is something you should consider, is that like if I had it land and pick up these rotations, I could be a little bit optimized with it, but that's not always what you have room for in your drawing. So I want to put it in a little bit of a weird place. So if I want to be quite measured in this, go from this corner out and see that that's just over 5/8, which would put us probably appropriately at that hinge point. So that's where I want to start the top. Okay. So I can't project straight out from here because that would be a different view. I want to see this view here, or this view here, this view here. I I don't want to see this corner view. We'll get to that. That's another type of drawing. So maybe let's get it a little more complicated even. Let's see where these things are going to land. Start projecting our rays from the corners. We don't want to overlap the drawings if we don't have to. All right, so that's the extent of my drawing. So if I were to place it right there, it's going to like touch these other two in an awkward way. So I'm going to actually adjust and maybe not use this full line. Maybe I just put it like further out here. Let's just pick somewhere kind of arbitrary and see what happens. I want it to be, and I'm only going to start with that one line. I'm not going to draw anything else. And this is the top of my cube. So how do I get this top here to this top? And this is where we can get creative, because you might need this when you have to start to manage a lot of different drawings on a page. It gets a little bit more complex. So I started this and realized it's going to be probably really confusing and super complicated to try to do this arcing double hinge inside this small space. But it might be a good opportunity to look at some other fun things we can do with hinging. So I'm going to pull it out backwards, because you already get the gist here of like a big hinge, and if I wanted to, I can rotate all of that and bring it all around and put the drawing kind of somewhere over here, but it's pretty tight in there and it might just get confusing. If you look at the example in the syllabus, if we space things out a little bit more, we can just use this same technique to hinge around. And technically we could just do it right here at the corners. It'll just be a very tight drawing. We probably need a little more space. But another fun thing we can do is hinge kind of from anywhere, as long as we follow the rules of perpendicular and parallel projection. So if I come back out this way, and I'm just going to pick a place to start to do this from. Get my key horizontal elements coming across here. All right, I'm drawing on top of my drawing. That's okay. They're very light lines. You're going to have a lot of very light lines on your drawing. They're a part of the drawing. So this is going to start to like get really complex off my page, but we're going to see how it goes. So I've come this way, and now this becomes one of my reflection lines like this. And I want to take this and work my way down and around so I can come in there and hit that line. It's going to push me pretty far down on the paper. So let's see what happens. All right, so that means I'm going to use this as my hinge point and hinge in reverse around this. And I'm just going to hinge to this same angle, so the 45. I'll draw a quick arc and then find that. So the reference. Hinge of that 45 to find out where that hinge is really going to be. Go with this other 45 to there. Bring that down. And where that intersects is where I want to move. So this way. So I've come back here, and then I'm reflecting this way, and then I'm going to turn and go back up that way. And this will be a little confusing at first, but it's worth playing around with and practicing. Not only is it interesting part of kind of the history of drafting and a visual context to things, it's also really good for thinking through relationships in space. You start to break them down into 2D abstractions and these projected relationships so that you can, in your mind, put together 3D compositions, excuse me, pretty quickly, because you're used to thinking through these problems. And it takes a little time, And that's a good part of it. You really got to think through the problem. So there we go. So somewhere in that, since I'm using all 45s, it's kind of nice. I need to hinge around and hit that line. That's going to be a little tricky on my paper. Just a little light soap and water to clean these, or some good Windex so it evaporates. It's really helpful. Let's go with that. I don't know if I can quite reach that. Oh, maybe we can. Let's try. All right, and this is going to start to look like the examples. Miro, there we go. So again, I'm drawing a line perpendicular to that, right? This is perpendicular to that, turned, and now it's perpendicular to this, which means I can do my 45-degree reflection so that I can come in perpendicular to this view that I'm trying to draw. And we'll just extend these. Oops, a little off the page. It's okay. Which means that now my 45 hinge is a straight vertical line. And I've run out of some paper. I could take another piece of trace and tape it there, but I think we'll be okay if we use the arcing hinge. Right? And it might be fine. Sometimes you'll go a little off your page. As long as it's not the main focus of the drawing. Oh, it just fits, right? Nice. This little tiny circle for the 1/16 will mean you need to keep this nice and sharp, and you might not be able to do it with the compass that you have. That's a pretty small arc. The other ways we can do it are by passing across this bisector, and you'll see these on the examples as well. I can also go across like this once I go perpendicular through the bisector angle. So this one doesn't have a bisector. To draw it, I'd have to come in with my adjustable triangle and play around with getting that angle, which should be 45 plus 22.5, or maybe we can just go to 22.5 right on this measurement here. Always double check, make sure the tool didn't move. And once we have that, then we can draw a line. Maybe we can find an angle. There we go. Right, the triangle should always have all kind of relative angles, so you don't have to do too much manual measuring. But I can transfer these to a straight line method as well. And maybe you find this to be faster. That's okay. It just gives a different look to the drawings. But these are equivalent. The arc or the straight line, as long as it goes perpendicular through the bisector of whatever this angle is. So now I've come around to here, and I can head off back up in this direction. Triangle is reaching the limits of its straightness there. There we go. Just have to ignore that other little line. Bring this one. And if yours are, new and not 20 years old, they will probably be a little better than this one. But it's the only big one I have. All right. So now this should start to look familiar, right? It's that same stuff. This is just brought back, reflected, down, reflected around, and projected out. So we're just following things from this edge here, this way, then this way, this way. And now we can draw that view, because we should have all the information we need. Bring some of these down. A couple other little important ones are these corners in here. And this might be a place to examine what's going on, right? How we want to draw that corner, and maybe it won't really matter yet, so let's stick without it for now. It should be in a place where I can just go ahead and start to darken in some of my major lines. I'm going to have a ground line here. And I've got a funny angle. This is probably a place where, well, we could use the adjustable triangle to like get it. We're only going to be drawing it once, and so, oops, drew to the wrong line. To ignore that, so I don't have an eraser to go back in and fix it. But I'm just going to use this because it's a little bit smaller to go ahead and connect these dots in the right way. Again, we can reference this and see that we're looking at it like this. We're actually going to have two edges, but we'll start with the one we can see, and then I'll project another line. Okay, we don't want to do too much free drawing like this because connecting 2 points is a little bit less accurate. If we're only going to be drawing a single line, it doesn't have to have parallel relationships. We'll do it once in a while. But now I need these other interior edges, which I'll have to bring down from up here. And again, that's going to actually be, I'm going to draw freehand, don't do this, right? But we'll use this as an example. The way the material is, there's a little corner there. So that's something I could draw. It's pretty small to see with hidden lines, but I can just quickly get a little bit of a projection on it to find out where it is. So we'll take that corner, project it back. This edge is still 90 degrees, so I don't need to worry about adjusting my triangle. Just use it. Again, we check on this. I know the back one on the left side goes behind the one on the right side, so I want to draw that right one first. And you can see I do have a little bit of air that's coming from pencil and from this floating measurement system here. So using the adjustable triangle would give me a little more accuracy. But there we go. We're starting to get a view in there. And hopefully we can start to see it. Probably need to work on my line weights, but for the most part, we've got that showing up through there. We're seeing the triangle hole, the edge here, the top edge there, the difference between these two edges here. We could maybe add some other lines for more detail. It just needs a little line work. So hopefully that gives a sense of what multi-view projection is in terms of this unfolding of the box in the very basic sense, and then that box can be unfolded in many different ways. And we can unfold this, we can unfold it at a 20-degree angle, we can unfold it at a 60-degree angle, we can unfold the back, we can kind of do anything. Since this side has the most going on, that's the one I'm doing, but if your designs a couple other cubes with different scenarios, you might want to do a specific corner or angle to reveal how it looks. So spend some time playing with this and getting a sense of what you want to show. Right now we're mostly constrained to the horizontal and vertical, and we'll look at techniques later that allow us to do other more complex things. So let's just stick with the simple horizontal and vertical. And remember that you can hinge with the arc, you can hinge with the angle bisector by going across it, you can hinge backwards and forwards as long as you kind of maintain your directions and parallel and perpendicular movements. So everything's got to be parallel and perpendicular, everything lines up. Once you have a few base measurements, you can start drawing everything, and I can keep going from this now. For the most part, I think everything, and draw any view of this cube I want. Right? Some are a little less exciting, though there's some detail in there, and some show us quite a lot of interesting things. Hopefully that helps you get set up, and good luck with your drawings. Talk to you next time.